Hi there, it's Monday the 15th of June 2020. This week we're beginning a new series and we're asking the question, what makes you cry? What makes you cry? I don't know if you are like me, but I watch movies and quite often I find myself crying. I think of my favourite movie, Lord of the Rings, and at the very end when Frodo is going away and saying goodbye to his friends, I am a blubbering mess every single time I watch it, no matter how many times I've watched it, because it touches my heart, and things that touch our hearts obviously make us cry. Crying is defined in the dictionary as the shedding of tears in response to an emotional state, pain, or a physical irritation of the eye. So sometimes physical things like pains in our body or things that irritate our eyes like dust or dirt can cause us to shed tears, to cry. But this week we're thinking particularly about the emotional things that make us cry. And in particular, three emotions that make people cry: anger, sadness, and happiness. Anger, sadness, and happiness. What's the purpose of crying? Well, actually, scientists and people who study human behaviour are not terribly sure as to what the purpose of crying is. It may be to release tension or pressure or stress, to resolve emotional conflict, to release hormones within us, to show to others that we are in need of help. But many different theories as to why we cry. Studies show that women cry more than men, up to 30 to 60 times per year on average, as opposed to 6 to 15 times for men, and for a length of about 6 minutes on average, as opposed to 2 to 4 minutes for men, which is maybe why men are often cited as being less in touch with their emotions. Although animals can shed tears, it's not believed that that's in response to emotional stimulus like humans. It's animals crying maybe out of pain or something, or suffering or whatever, but for human beings it's different in crying in response to sadness or anger or happiness. So here's some questions. Why does God give us the ability to cry? Why has God given us that ability? Does crying show us that we're in touch with our emotions? And if we're not crying at any time, does that show us that we're not in touch with our emotions, that there's some problem within us? Perhaps we have had some sorrow in our life, some deep sorrow, perhaps bereavement, and we've found it difficult to cry. Why is that? Is crying sometimes the most appropriate and the most helpful thing that we can do? Will crying always be a part of the human condition? And does what we cry about say something about what we care about? And if we don't care, then we don't cry. Is that true? In the Bible, Jeremiah, one of the prophets, was known as the weeping prophet because he cried a lot. And it says in Jeremiah chapter 9, he says, "Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears. I would weep day and night for the slain of my people." His own people were in terrible trouble of one kind and another. And Jeremiah says, my head was like a fountain. It would weep day and night for my people. When we look at our society, when we look at the people that we share life with round about, are there things there that would make us cry? Are there things that would make us happy? Like Captain Tom Moore, that wonderful veteran who did the walking with his Zimmer to raise money for charity during the coronavirus lockdown, raised over £30 million, and I think is up for a knighthood, which is very well deserved. Maybe you shed a tear, tears of happiness, reading that story or watching the story on the news. Maybe there are things that we cry about them because of sadness. I think of one of our church members whose husband recently passed away and then only the week after discovered she had cancer. That made me cry. That made many of us in the church cry. Makes me want to cry even thinking about it. There are things in society that make us want to cry because it makes us so sad. And things that make us want to cry because of anger. I think about the black man, George Floyd, who was killed in police custody in the States. unarmed, something that makes us angry, and sometimes perhaps we shed tears because of that anger. So yes, there are things in society that make us cry, and we should cry. Things that make us happy, things that come out of sadness, things that come out of anger. And you know, God, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is with us to comfort us in our sorrow. What makes you cry? We're going to think a little bit more deeply this week about that, and about the God of all comfort who can comfort us in our sorrow. God bless you. Speak to you again tomorrow.